Good evening and welcome to our Smyrna Town Council workshop for August to set our council meeting for September. Tonight, before we move into our items for discussion, I'm going to ask Mark Adkins to do our prayer, and HG, will you do our pledge for us? If you'll all stand with us, please.
Let's bow. Father in heaven, we just come to you today with grateful hearts once again, Lord, for all the blessings that you've bestowed on us and our community. Father, we continue to ask you to protect those that serve our community, our employees and our fire and police departments, and all the people that sometimes come in harm's way. Father, just put a hedge of protection around them today and to every day that they work. Go with us now as we delineate the decisions of our citizens and of our town. Give us wisdom, help us through the process. And Lord, we just ask that you continue to richly bless us and forgive us of our many sins. It's those things we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Place the flag, please. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Mark. HG, I thought you were going to be like one of the kids we have that forgets to start with I, so I'm glad you pulled it out there at the end.
I like the entertainment.
That's what I'm hoping for. Tonight we have a presentation from the Sister City Committee. Mark, if you'll, do you all want to come forward or? Okay. Great.
4 weeks ago tonight, we returned from another successful trip to Zama where we had 4 students and 2 chaperones, Erica and myself. And the reason we only had 4 students is because these 4 students have been in the program somewhere between 3 and 6 years waiting for their chance to go. And because of COVID, they almost missed it, but Zama and us made an exception for them to be able to go. And so it was very successful, and they certainly appreciated the opportunity. So as usual, we exchanged gifts with Zama, a mayor-to-mayor gift and a city-to-city gift. So we're here tonight to present those 2 gifts to the mayor and to the city.
Great.
So first, we'll do the mayor-to-mayor gift.
You presenting the mayor's gift on my behalf, so great honor to do that.
And a few things about the gift. It's called Obi Art. The gift is Obi Art. This Obi Art is created by Shuko Yamamoto, the flower and obi artist living in Zama City. Obi is the belt of a kimono, the traditional Japanese costume used only for ceremonies and formal occasions these days. She gives it new life to the obi, combining flowers and creating compositions and decorations, which is the delight to the eyes. And if you look on the back, there's a sheet that tells you the history of all that stuff, so you can read that at your convenience. And this one is for the city.
So this gift, as Mark said, is from Zama to the town of Smyrna. And as you can see on the front, there's a tulip poplar, our state tree, the Smyrna and Zama city flags, Zama's mascot, Zamarine, in the lower right corner, and a logo that represents the friendship between Zama and Smyrna. It was made by a group of members of a patchwork quilting group, and I'm not going to try to attempt the name of that, but it took 1 month to make. And while they were making it, they prayed for a continued friendship between our 2 towns.
I just want to say how much we appreciate the committee and all that you all have done. You know, I don't think there can be better ambassadors, not only for the town of Smyrna, the state of Tennessee, but for the United States when our students go over, as well as our chaperones. And I just can't tell you how much we appreciate all you all do to make this possible, because, I mean, it's a lot of work. It's not just the year that you go over. So thank you, and I hope the students had a great time. Thank you. Great, thank you. We'll now move into our items for discussion. Our first item is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute a one-year contract for the purchase of 7 new cameras through our Flock Safety. Chief?
Mayor and council, this just adds to the contract we had from the previous year and adds 7 additional cameras around the town for us to use and utilize as far as tracking information and registrations for stolen cars and things of that nature.
How long have we had the cameras?
This is our third year.
Third year? Well, I know this is a program that we really appreciate you all looking into and doing, and I think it's something that's really benefited our community in regards to safety as well as communities around us, because I know that they also ask for assistance sometimes with our cameras, so.
Yes, it's beneficial to us for sure.
Great.
Will these be located in a central location around town or at different areas all across?
Just all
city
across the
limits?
town. We actually got with investigations and asked them where they preferred the cameras to be located, since they work a lot of these cases where the cars come through different areas where they've had a camera there, they might be able to solve the case. So we got with Lieutenant Duke, and he gave us a list of locations, and I supplied those to Mr. Hercules.
Okay, and so on the quote, there's like 2 are different price than the other 5. Is it because they're a different type of machine, or?
It shouldn't be. Some of the charges were different as far as installation for the cameras, so they add that to some of the price of the camera.
Some of them
Okay.
we're able to get on our fiber, and some of them we have to do cell service. So
Okay.
there's a little bit of difference there.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, we'll put that on our agenda and move on to item 2, which is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute an amendment to the contract for ITS phases 3, 4, and 5 to extend the date of completion to December 31st, 2024.
Thank you, Mayor Council. As you know, we finally gotten a notice to proceed to construction phase on this project. We went out to bid. The bid came in significantly higher than the grant that we were able, that we had at that time. We're asking for an extension on the project. Also, we're currently working with the CMAQ department at TDOT, as well as GNRC, to obtain some additional money on that one through the carbon reduction grant, and I've applied for that already to get the additional money we need to do this project and finish it all out.
Will it ever be finished out?
Yes.
Well, I will tell you, in our meeting yesterday with, we had a task force meeting, this was one of the things that we had quite a bit of discussion about, is overruns and how we're going about funding those type of projects, so.
Okay.
Council, any questions on this?
So this was so we did accept a bid, we just need to,
Well, we received the
Address
bid.
the
We weren't
money
able to
portion.
move forward with it because it was so much higher than the grant that we had. And so we weren't able to move forward with that bid. So once we do get the additional money, then we'll have to rebid the project.
that's what I was wondering, if we were going to have to rebid again?
Yes.
Okay. So will this date change, though, or they're required to actually do the work by this December 31st, or it's subject to change again?
I'm hoping it won't change again. If we can get approval soon, I don't know when soon is, the next few months, on the additional money, and they program it in, then we'll be able to go out to bid and start the project. I think the project takes about 8 to 12 months to complete. So if we can get this in the next 4 or 5 months and approved by TDOT, then we should be able to complete it by that date.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? We'll move on to item 3, which is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute an agreement with S&W Contracting to relocate existing fiber lines.
Yes, Middle Tennessee Electric has installed some new poles, and some of them move further back than the existing poles. The fiber that we're talking about here is like our Murfreesboro fiber. Also, it's our fiber that goes in between some traffic signals as well back into our ITS system. They're near the intersection of Sam Ridley and Old Nashville Highway. So this, we went out to bid. SW Contractor was the only contractor who responded, $29,640 to move the fiber lines and extend some of the fiber to be able to hang from the new poles that Middle Tennessee Electric installed.
Questions on the relocation of our fiber? Okay. Item 4 is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute the annual stormwater report submission to TDEC.
Every year, we have to submit an annual report to TDEC for what we're doing in the stormwater department. That includes everything from public education, outreach, things such as boat days, displays that we present at schools, also our construction inspection that we do while people are performing grading on sites, and then identifying any illicit discharges that may have occurred either on a construction site or in an existing area of town.
Any questions on our annual report?
Yes, I was looking on here, and it said that there were like 7 investigations that had to be done. And have you completed them, or are they all still ongoing?
I believe they're all complete. Typically, that's maybe a phone call that someone has seen somebody dump something on the roadway or dump something, it could be concrete or grease, into a storm inlet structure. We go and do an investigation, find out who did that. If we can find the person, then we issue them a violation notice on that.
Okay.
But those are all been complete.
And so if there is a fine, is it through TDEC that they're fined, or is it through us?
We would work with TDEC, and if it was significant, then we would notify them. They would get involved, and they would make the decision to either fine them or they would, force them to do cleanup. And there are times that we've enforced a cleanup on people when we know who it is, and we've had them go out there and remove places where they've illegally dumped grease on the ground, and any discharges from grease traps and the oil containers outside.
Okay.
Other questions on this? Move on to item 5, which is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute change order number 3 with Cleary Construction for the Jeannie Lane Extension Project. Hey, Charles.
Hi, Mayor and Council. This change order is for additional storm structures associated with the drainage revision that was made due to what was in the ground was different from what we had in our plans.
Questions for Charles on this?
Okay. I guess I'm doing a lot of reading today because I have more questions. So in reading the letter that was attached, saying that that some of the water might bypass, is that why the new pipe was
It was
added,
the
or no?
existing drainage structures up around in the Academy area were at a different elevation than what we originally thought they were, so we had to add additional drainage structures to tap into that existing system.
Okay, so part of this says that the line was upsized to a 36-inch, and it was
Right.
an 18. Did it stay an 18, or did you change it to an 36?
That's what these additional structures are for. We're
Okay.
upsizing them to tap into that
Okay.
larger. That was there, like I said, we thought it was an 18, but it was larger, so that's why we're going back with the upsized structures.
Okay, and so then that will address the problem that they
Yes.
saw being
Right,
created?
yes, through
Okay.
the drainage revision that has been done with
Okay.
plans. So we just needed different concrete structures than we had on the original plans.
Okay.
Other questions on the Jeannie Lane Extension Project? Okay, we'll move on to item 6, which is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute the scope and fee proposal with Energy Land and Infrastructure for the Weekly Lane Improvements Project.
We're looking to hire ELI to do survey and preliminary functional plans. This is to provide safety improvements on Weekly Lane from Swan Drive out to the town limits. Mainly be putting shoulders, 2-foot shoulders on the road, plus other safety improvements along the route.
Questions or comments on this?
No additional lanes, simply shoulders.
Just try to get shoulders right, just get that in. We may look with the functionals, we can get a left turn lane in at maybe 11th or something like that with the new Rutherford County Recycle Center going in. We'll look at that, but these functionals are just checking out right away and what possibly could improvements to be made.
Okay. Item 7 is approval of the terms of and authorization for the mayor to execute a development agreement with Blakeney Commons relative to the road impact fee offsets for the Blakeney Commons development. Hey, Kevin.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request from Blakeney Commons for the Blakeney Commons development from the developer there. The impact fee ordinance does allow for offsets to road impact fees for road improvements that are undertaken by a developer to our major road system. The developer of Blakeney Commons is required to make improvements to Morton Lane to facilitate the construction of a sidewalk along Morton Lane, which would eventually connect over to Cedarstone Park. The developer will not be building any houses in the development, but will be selling building pads only, and therefore will not be paying any impact fees. The ordinance does allow for agreements to be made between the town and the developer where the builder still pays a fee and the town has to periodically reimburse the developer. This would just be for the road portion of the fees. I did attach the agreement. The cost estimate for the improvements is $173,282.50, so that would be the maximum amount of reimbursement that would be possible. Staff would recommend approval.
And just to make this clear, this is not something out of the ordinary.
This is not, no. This same developer made some improvements at Morton and right before Calvin Road intersection. And so those, in the Blakeney development, and so that has been done. There's also one or two others that we've done this with, yes.
Just further on to that, this comes from impact fees from the houses being built in Blakeney Commons. If we don't get to the 173,000, then they only get up to that amount.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to item 8, which is consideration of an ordinance relative to the rezoning of property located on tax map 50, parcel 14.00 to go from C2 to I2. It's requested by Rashish Shaw. The property requested to be rezoned contains 9.88 acres and is located on Tridon Drive and Safari Drive. It was deferred on second reading.
Yeah, this item was deferred at your August meeting to September. Nothing has changed since you looked at it on first reading. This would be a rezoning of the property from C2 to I2. The land use plan is for that area is our 24 Gateway area. Surrounding zoning is a mix of C2 and I2 in town and light industrial in Rutherford County. Just for everyone's information, a portion of this property does lie within the floodway as well as the floodplain, so development would have to comply with our floodplain requirements as far as development. The Planning Commission did review this, did recommend approval. Staff would also recommend approval.
Questions on this one? We've
Kevin,
talked about it quite
if
a
I
bit.
remember, we deferred this at the
the
submitter's
developer's
request.
request, yes.
Do we know why they requested it be deferred? Was there an issue or?
Originally, they had indicated they wanted to withdraw, and then I guess there was some issue. They were working with the seller on the negotiations and whatnot, and I guess initially they said they wanted to withdraw, and then came back and said, hey, we would like to defer a month. We think we might can still get the worked out. I haven't had any other further communication from them, so I don't know if there's anything else happening with that or not, but that is why it was deferred.
Other questions or comments? Then we'll move on to item 9, which is consideration of a resolution declaring the intent of the town council to consider the adoption of a commercial property assessed clean energy and resilience program.
Mayor and Council, we've had a request from a commercial entity out off of Sam Ridley Parkway. This is a program that the state legislature put in place. Basically, it allows certain qualifying candidates to go in and ask for a loan through this program at a lesser interest rate, but it's only for green energy, cost savings, windows, heat and air, low flow shower heads, those kind of things. So we do have a project that's been approved for Sam Ridley Parkway. They would like to go in and do their regular real estate loan, but they're going to move some of the loan over to this portion. So what happens is basically the town has to approve it. It's just because of local approval. It's not, we're not going to be monitoring it. But for doing this, we do have the ability to profit on a percentage of the loan for the town. Then we have two options. One is we can go back and verify all the cost savings measures that were put into the building. That would be at our cost and of course our workforce. Or we can allow the client to work directly with the bank to have a third party. So basically, all we would do is process the paperwork, approve that we don't have a problem with this client using this type of financing. We would collect a fee, and then we would be out of it. The town is not responsible for any debt fault or anything like that on behalf of the client. It's just a program that was put in by the legislature. We did Rex and myself and Jeff sat down and had several conversations about this. I had several conversations with the CPACER. You'll see it on the next line item. That's what it's commonly known as, is CPACER financing. Did not find any problems, and we actually, White House, Tennessee, and a couple other places have actually implemented this. But to do it, we do have to have an ordinance allowing for this. So we present that to you tonight, knowing that we do have a client that would like to move forward with this.
So no drawbacks that y'all
We
could
cannot
see?
find anything that would be a drawback, and I think the maximum fee is $50,000, and it can be added back into the general fund as a collection, so.
So if there's going to be a third party that monitors, you've
That's right.
chosen to do the
Yes,
latter?
we do not want to do all the third parties.
So how are they paid? Are they paid from
They're
a
paid through
portion
the
of
bank.
that?
Yes, they're paid through the bank,
Oh,
not through us.
through the bank?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yeah, once we collect our fee, that's ours.
okay.
Other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to item 10, which goes along with item 9, with consideration of an ordinance to amend Title 5, Chapter 9 of the Smyrna Municipal Code relative to the CPACER Act, and this will be a first reading. Anything you want to add?
Pretty much said everything. This just gives us they have to have an ordinance approved by the town for the financing to go in place.
Okay. Council, any questions on that? Item 11 is presentation relative to our town court. And before we move into our presentation of the courts tonight, I wanted to give a little bit of information on how we've gotten here. In the early 90s, Smyrna began to hear general sessions cases in our municipal court. And for those of you who might not know, municipal court's basically your traffic tickets, your codes violations, and general sessions court hears the criminal laws of the state. Counties are required to have general sessions courts, but not the cities. And Smyrna's leadership chose to add criminal jurisdiction to its court in the early 90s. The town of Smyrna is the only municipality in Rutherford County that currently has a general sessions court. Laverne, Eagleville, and Murfreesboro all use the Rutherford County criminal court system in Murfreesboro, but they each do have a municipal court. In 2019, administration here at the town did a deep dive into our courts and the impacts it had on our overall budget and the police department. Because of multiple factors at that time, administration chose to leave the courts as we have them today. Back during our budget retreat in the spring, I asked Town Manager Brian Hercules to look at doing another deep dive into our courts and the impact it had on our overall budget and the other departments. Brian asked if we could wait until the budget process was over so our finance director, Rex Gaither, and his team could have the budget finalized before starting the court's review. So at the end of May, I asked Town Manager Hercules to try and get a public meeting together with council, staff, Judge Stevens, and Clerk Brewer. Our first public meeting we went over numbers that you're going to see here tonight, as well as concerns of our new police chief in regards to the liability and safety. Our second public meeting looked at numbers of what the budget would look like if we sent the duplicated process of General Sessions Court back to Rutherford County. After the second meeting, a council member asked for the presentation to be put on a workshop agenda so the presentation could be presented to the community and so that we could share information we had gathered since our second public meeting. That's the presentation you're hearing tonight. Now, let me be clear about something. This is not about anybody doing anything wrong, not at all. It's about a group of people working really hard to do the best job they can do. I think what you're going to see tonight is a question this council and ultimately the citizens of the town of Smyrna have to ask ourselves. Is this a duplicated process that we want to continue, or do we want to move the General Sessions Court back to Rutherford County for judicial economy and efficiency? So as you listen to the presentation tonight, that's what I ask that you ask yourself. Is this something that we want to continue, or do we want to move this back to Rutherford County? So Brian and Jeff and staff have put together a presentation that we have gone over in our last two meetings, but I wanted us to be able to hear it at a council workshop and also for the public to be able to hear it. So Jeff, I think you're going to start us out.
I think so. You're going to have that up there. Just like we did at the first public meeting, this is just kind of a brief overview of the related provisions under the town charter and the municipal code for courts. Like I said, it's a very 10,000 feet view. If you go to the next slide. As a reminder that the town charter is likened to the Constitution for the town. It's our founding document. And then the municipal code would have what we'd liken to the statutes. So obviously the council can change the municipal codes with two readings, whereas the charter is approved by the legislature. And so any change with the charter would have to go through a process which includes approval of the legislature. In the town charter, under Article 9 is where you'll find the town court. As it states in here, it's established within the town of Smyrna, town court, jurisdiction over all infractions of municipal ordinances of the town of Smyrna in accordance with 9-02 of this article. Jurisdiction of the town court shall also include concurrent jurisdiction with courts of general sessions in any cases of violation of criminal laws committed within the corporate limit of the town of Smyrna, including the jurisdiction to conduct preliminary examinations and bind over defendants to the grand jury. So that is where your concurrent jurisdiction comes in under the charter. Also, we have a town court clerk under 9.03. There's a established within the town of Smyrna position town court clerk who shall be responsible for maintaining all the records of the town court. Oh, we skipped one, I think. There we go. Title III of the Smyrna Municipal Code is where all of the administration spells out those things that are not as specific in the charter for the town court administration, town judge, town court clerk, and traffic school. Council had asked me to also kind of give an overview of the interaction with administration and town employees of the court. So this next part is kind of just going over some of those sections pertaining to the responsibilities of both. Under the charter, under Article 604, gives the powers and duties of the town manager. As you'll see there, it says that he should be the chief administrative officer of the town. Town manager shall be responsible to the town council for the administration of all town affairs placed in his charge or under this charter. Town manager shall have the following powers and duties: to appoint, when deemed necessary for the good of the service, suspend or remove any town employees and appointive officers as provided for by or under this charter for personnel rules adopted pursuant to this charter, and to direct and supervise the administration of all departments, offices, and agencies of the town except as provided by this charter or by law. Said direction and supervision shall be through the appropriate department directors according to the chain of command and in conformity with all personnel and administrative procedures provided pursuant to this charter. And then in Article 10.02, goes over the direction and supervision of departments, offices, and agencies. All departments, offices, and agencies under the direction and supervision of the town manager shall be administered by an officer appointed by and subject to the direction and supervision of the town manager. Town manager may serve as the head of one or more such departments, offices, or agencies, or may appoint one person as head or of two or more of them. And then found in the municipal code, as we just discussed a minute ago, under Title III, Section 112, employees in judicial and courts departments, basically states that all the personnel in judicial and courts departments, except the elected officials, are deemed employees of the town, and as such are required to abide by all the terms of the town employee handbook, as well as any policies and procedures related to employment with the town. Town judge and town court clerk shall act as directors of their respective departments, subject to employment and employee-related decisions being subject to approval by the town manager in accordance with the provisions of the charter of the town. And this here obviously is not part of the charter. It's something we talked about in the previous meetings. There was litigation, I believe it started in 2004, by Rutherford County. They were seeking the fines and forfeitures owed to the county by the Smyrna court due to having concurrent jurisdiction due to the criminal side. There was an agreement, an agreed order that went into place that if the town was going to sustain having the concurrent jurisdiction, that 40% of the state fines and forfeitures would be forwarded to the county general fund.
Okay, I'll pick up there and talk about the actual financial positions, but before I do, I had a couple of comments I just want to make. First and foremost, as the mayor has indicated, we were asked to make this presentation based on other conversations in 2019 and looking forward. You know, when we review the financial positions of the court, I just want to point out something. You can really not talk about the court system in a profit and loss type situation, and that's what typically we think of as in business. It's really about what the positive and negative impact on the associated cost to the value of the services that are rendered. And I just want to make that kind of clear. You know, and again, the mayor said this, but I just want to reiterate that, you know, when we look at the municipal court and the general sessions court, there are two different courts. Rutherford County does statutorily have the privilege of offering general sessions. It became a duplicate service here in Smyrna in '93, and we just need to understand that Murfreesboro, Laverne, Eagleville, and all of those places send all their general sessions cases to Rutherford County. Tennessee has 95 counties with 346 municipalities. Only 26 municipalities have concurrent general sessions. 6 of those jurisdictions are in Chattanooga, within the county of Chattanooga, Hamilton County. And so that leaves about 18 to 20 out of 346 municipalities across the state that are actually operating in general sessions. We do know that there's one that has relinquished that. That was Dixon, back over to their county, and there was one other that was looking at making this change as well. The numbers I'm about to share with you are from the audited town general ledger. These are not numbers that came out of reports out of any of the systems. These are out of the general ledger. These are actually the audited, 2022 audited, 2023 is going through the audit at this time. One of the other things that has come to attention, and you'll see in the numbers, as because we're a concurrent general sessions, the town of Smyrna does not have the luxury of the DAs and the public defenders and transport of prisoners other than what we pay above and beyond the normal court system. So we have to pay those folks to come and participate in our courts. I will say that over the last couple of months, as we've gone through this process, I want to recognize the clerk, Lisa, for coming forward and putting on the table several opportunities for us to look at cost savings and those kind of things, and we've shared those back and forth, and I appreciate all the work that they have done there. Unfortunately, there's not anything to date that we can really put a value to. It's going to take some time to see if we can implement some of these changes to share in some cost savings, but I did want to recognize that work has been going on. So if we go to the next slide, what I've done is I'm going to show you the combined court judicial system. I know it's kind of hard to read up there. It's a lot of numbers. And I'm going to just really focus on 2023. These are the most recent numbers. So what we'll start with is the municipal court collections. So there was $1,074,725 that came through the court. We have liabilities to pay, that we pay to other agencies. These liabilities, and you're going to hear me talk about liabilities in every section of this court review. These are payments that are made to folks like MAD, which is Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the DAs, those kind of things. All of those are liabilities that have to be paid off the top. So those dollars are a negative impact. So it gives us municipal court revenue in 2023 of $975,502. The municipal court expense was $242,838. That includes 3 full-time employees that are recognized in the municipal court. That does not recognize the clerk or the judge. They will be in other parts of this, and I'll talk through that. So the net municipal subtotal was $732,664,000 to the positive, okay? General sessions, as we look at it, total collections was $1,323,000. Liabilities, again, paid out to other agencies, accounted for $903,000. Some of this is just what Jeff was talking about, that 40% that goes back to Rutherford County. Then there's 57 different liabilities within that category that get paid out prior to any money staying in Smyrna. So the general sessions revenue is a positive $419,707. General sessions expenses, $531,299. So a net negative impact of $111,592. Then we have a probation that's done in-house now. The revenue was $269,590. Liabilities paid out $29,119 for probation revenue of $240,471. Probation expense was $297,082. For the net probation subtotal was $56,611 of negative. And the judicial expense is basically the judge, help me, Jeff, I lost the word, the magistrates, and then any other employees that work within the judicial office. It's $419,507, and because there's no revenue stream just back into that side of the business, it's a net negative $419,507,000. So that gives us a total net courts negative or positive cash flow just for the general sessions of $144,500 or $954. Now, one of the other things we took into consideration is we looked at this, and again, you have to look at all costs associated with operating the court, so that these were the direct costs. There are indirect costs. Those indirect costs are our police labor, where we have 4 people working in our warrants department. Without general sessions, we wouldn't have warrants. But because of general sessions, we do have to serve the warrants. We also have to do pickup of any of the prisoners, I can't ever say the word. Extradition, those kind of things. So these dollars come directly off of the, again, general ledger of the cost associated with providing those services. Then we have transport, because we have to transport the prisoners from Rutherford County to Smyrna, and then from Smyrna back on the court dates. The actual cost, $53,955. So the subtotal of cash flow was a net negative for general sessions of $403,539. Now, I've got an offset of salaries and overheads. One of the things that we realized going through this process on our traffic court, the expenses are charged to the general sessions, and the cost where people pay to go to the traffic court, or traffic classes, the profits are shown back up on the municipal court. So there's an offset of salaries and overhead of $145,000 that would be a positive net back. So in 2023, the net cash flow negative to operate both courts was $258,539. Any questions about those numbers?
So both direct and indirect costs for municipal and general sessions both
That's correct.
is a negative $258,000.
Right. So if we take municipal court completely out of the equation and we look at just the general sessions, that'll be this next slide. So this is judicial, general sessions, and probation cash flow only. So general sessions, again, some of this will be repetitive, but at $419,000 in revenue, general sessions expense of $531. We started, I should say this, I started with the number after all the liabilities are paid. This is just what we're dealing with as far as cash flow inside the city of Smyrna. So $419,707 with a general sessions expense of $531,000, and then that gives you a negative impact of $111,000. Probation, $240,000 revenue, probation expense $297,000, so a negative impact of $56,000. And then judicial, $419,000 with a negative impact of $419,000. So the total general sessions and probation cash flow is a negative $587,000 when you look at general sessions as a standalone without the offsets from the positive impact of the municipal court. Then we go back to the indirect cost. Again, those are the same, $494,000 for the police labor, warrants, and liaison. Transportation at $53,000. So that gives you a negative net cash flow of $1,136,000 to operate general sessions as a standalone. You do the offsets of the salaries and the overhead on the traffic school is a positive $145,000 influence. So your net negative was $991,203 for the operation of general sessions. That's 23. If you look at the 22 number, doing the same math, it comes down to a negative $916,000.
And that's after you've added all back in the salaries for judge, clerk,
Yes, ma'am.
all that's back in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. One of the other things that came to attention, and Mayor, you made this comment a few minutes ago, was the concerns by our police chief with the safety and liability issues around not only transportation of the prisoners, but then also the booking and those kind of things, because we bring all of that through the Smyrna Police Department. So I would like to ask Jason Irvin, our police chief, to come up and speak to those things.
Mayor and Council, firstly, when I took the job 9 months ago, one of the first things I wanted to do is do an overview of the department and see what processes we had, procedures that we had to make sure we were doing what we needed to do to address personnel, safety, and liability concerns. And I will tell you, one of the first things I did was come to Mr. Hercules and tell him one of the concerns I had was a process as far as court security and our transports and our booking procedures that we currently do. I came from a place after 25 years working for Chattanooga Police Department where we didn't have a redundancy in how we handle these procedures. We always took a person that was arrested straight to the Hamilton County Jail. We were not in charge of any kind of court security. We were able to hand the prisoner off to the county jail, and we eliminated ourselves from any kind of booking process and danger that was associated with that.
So when you're talking about you're talking about us doing the same thing that
As the
Rutherford
county would
County
do.
General Sessions Court is doing? Okay.
Yes.
But then also you said, I think you mentioned that their courts are there's a Hamilton County, but also a city of Chattanooga that's involved in this,
They have some
right?
precincts that they're doing some, my understanding, looking at their system, they have some precincts that are doing some of the court activity, so everybody doesn't go in, but they're trying, the research we've done is they're trying to close those down and go back to just the county function.
Okay. So it's still in the process of being done, but
Well,
they
for
do some of
Chattanooga,
this like this.
it's always been like that. We have a municipal court down there, but as far as any kind of general sessions, it's all through the county. So that's all processed through the county. They do the court security and they do all kind of the transports as far as prisoners go. We have nothing, Chattanooga had nothing to do with that as far as the police department.
Okay.
Some of the other jurisdictions is I think what Brian is referencing.
Yeah.
They're trying to shut down their general sessions and go just where they have municipal court.
Okay.
But I kind of wanted to break it down in three topics: personnel, safety, and liability. The first, personnel-wise. Going to a different process, we would be able to reallocate 4 warrant officers we presently have right now that are responsible. Their primary duties is to provide court security and transport for the court. Going to a different process, we will be able to reallocate those 4 personnel to different parts of the department that we could use them for and utilize them. Whether it be going back to patrol or some other specialized unit. That would also include up to 5 additional personnel that we now have to bring in for when we're strained or they're shorthanded in warrants. We would bring those 5 people in on overtime to supplement that. Changing the process that we presently do now, we would have those 5 people back and reallocated somewhere else and be able to use them and utilize them somewhere else in the city. You know, eliminating booking and fingerprinting of arrestees would also increase the time that we have for patrol functions. It takes a lot of time to do that. It's a process that if we were to transport straight to the county, they take care of that process. We would not have to no longer do that. That's time consuming, or we can transport them straight to the jail if we change our process and we take ourselves out of that process altogether.
So just to educate the citizens and those that are listening, tell us a little bit about that process, what it's like now and what it would go to.
So an officer has to bring them to our police department, our police station. They're responsible for doing all the booking procedures, the paperwork, fingerprinting them, taking them back there and put them in a holding cell if necessary while we're processing them. So it's a whole process that takes time away from them able to, and contrast, if they were to arrest someone, they could start their paperwork. If we change to go into Rutherford County, they could take them straight to the jail, have their paperwork ready. The jailers would take that person back and do all that processing, the fingerprinting, the booking, things of that nature that now our officers have to do.
So our officers technically just drop them off, leave them, and then would come back to Smyrna?
Return back to duty, yes.
Okay.
And all the other police forces in the county are doing that now, correct?
Yes.
Have you heard anything from the other communities that it's a long, drawn-out process, that they're having trouble with it, or any of that?
I
with
talked to the
county?
chiefs of the other jurisdictions, and it's not an issue for them. They've been operating that way for a long time. Like any process, there's always things that happen, but for the general consensus is no, it's not an issue. Streamlining the DUI arrest. Presently, if we have an officer that makes a DUI arrest, they have to come in, do the booking at our police station. Then they will have to transport the person to do a blood draw. They would have to take them to the hospital. They have to get the warrant at the police station. Then they have to take them to the hospital to actually do the blood draw. And then at that point, they're still having to transport them to jail. If we were able to transport them straight to the Rutherford County Jail, at that time, they have magistrates there that can sign a warrant for the blood. The jail has a nurse that would come out and actually do the blood draw, and then the officer could turn that prisoner over to the Rutherford County jailer, and then get back in service. They would not have to do a long process like is happening right now. A lot of times going to the hospital, they have to go to the hospital to get the blood drawn from the hospital. Or if they change the process, they could do it at the jail. It could all be done at the jail from jail personnel. You know, eliminating prisoner transports and time spent on extraditions would also increase our personnel on the street and our availability for service. Utilizing e-warrants would also assist. It's something we're kind of doing now, but most of the paperwork and warrants that are necessary that our officers need to get signed can be done electronically now.
Go back to transport, again, just so those that are listening can understand. Tell us what you're having to do in regards to transport of prisoners.
So during court, we're having to transport, we're going to have to pick people up from the Rutherford County Jail and transport them to court here in Smyrna. And then when that process is over, if they have to go back to the jail, we have to transport those prisoners back to the Rutherford County Jail. So that's very time consuming, and as I've mentioned earlier, that's where we usually have to bring 5 or more officers in on top of the 4 officers we already have assigned to warrants to be able to carry out those duties.
And what happens if they're at the county? The sheriff's department takes care of that? If it moves to the county, then the sheriff's department would transport
Yes.
from the jail to the...
Yes, they would handle all the transports at that point.
So on the jail dockets that I'm just trying to get clarification on what the process looks like. So I thought that there was a jail docket where you didn't have to bring prisoners or defendants back to Smyrna if they're already in the jail. There's an actual docket that is
They do have a
video.
They have a video docket that's part of the process, but when the defendant has to come to court, we still have to transport them up here. At some point, depending on the charges and those kind of things, I don't get too deep in the weeds here, but they do still have to transport for some of the dockets back to Smyrna.
Okay, and so when you make that, when you do the transport, it's in an actual car? So
We
you
have a
can't
van.
put them in
Transport
together?
van.
We have a transport.
Okay, and so the van, is it that the van's not a safe way to transport, or, I guess I'm trying to understand.
It's just, it's a
How
matter
many
of
people
time
are-
and safety. I'll get into the safety part, but anytime you're having to transport these prisoners, even if it's a car accident, we're liable for that, because we're in care of those people. And then you add to that just the time factor of having to go and pick the prisoner inmate up, bring them back here, transporting them back to Rutherford County again. And that's a lot of times why we have to utilize people on overtime to be able to cover all those duties.
Okay. Okay, and so I think we had in the budget, there's the van, so we're not looking to get a van to be able to transport
It's
multiple
been-
more, or?
Yes, the van that we have currently, we don't know docket to docket whether we're transporting 2 people or 10 people. It just depends on what the docket has. But we do have a van that we were looking to replace. It has not been ordered yet. We're having trouble getting vehicles. That's one of the ones that we're having trouble getting anybody that will take our order on that vehicle, so, under the state contract. But yes, there is a van to replace the existing. The existing van still operates, it's just got some high mileage on it.
Okay. So it's more, so it's the time invested in having to transport more than the security of it all? Or
No, ma'am,
both?
I think it's also security and the risk you're taking, the inherent risk you're taking by having to transport these prisoners. It's a duty, and this has been my point when we speak about my experience from Chattanooga. It's a duty that at Hamilton County, they are tasked to do that. The sheriff is tasked to do court security and prisoner transport, the jail itself. Us being involved in that process to me is a huge liability and risk, not only for our officers, but the prisoners who are transporting, when it's something that's already given and done by the sheriff's department. Now, and just adding the personnel usage and the time that it takes to do this and accomplish this every day they have court, and if someone has to be transported to the court and then back to the jail.
Okay.
Hey, Chief, is the issue or the safety issue, is it just moved from us to the county, or are they set up to where they can do it and it's safer for both?
Well, right now, they would not take that duty on
Okay.
unless we moved cases there and we actually operated out of their court. So if that was to change and our process was to change, it's their responsibility. So we would no longer have to do any transport, any kind of court security, which would free up personnel, like I was mentioning before. And it relieves us, to me, it relieves us from the risk and the liability of having to handle those inmates and prisoners during the transport process.
But my question is, does that just move the risk to somebody else?
It does, Jim.
Yes,
What you're
yes.
asking is, but the sheriff's department, just as Rutherford County Court, that's a statutory responsibility of that court and of that department. When we take that on to do the transport for the Smyrna court, we're just adding that risk to us. Yes, if we didn't transport and we didn't have those court cases here in Smyrna, you're absolutely right. Those would fall back on the county, not only the sheriff's department, but also the courtroom.
So statutorily, it's their
It's
responsibility?
their responsibility.
Yes.
Just as it is when I talked about the 95 counties that all have responsibility for general sessions, all of those are inherent responsibilities of that county.
And I kind of think I know where you're going with that, and I asked that specific question. It's my understanding it's their statutory responsibility to the county seat courthouse, not to any satellite by choice courthouses or courtrooms. Because I asked that if
And
the
language
sheriff's
says that?
department, and
That's
what?
I'm just.
Right.
The
And
language
from
itself
what-
says that the county seat.
That was what I was told by the sheriff's department. So,
Go to the next slide. So again, I want to address some of the safety concerns, and to me, you know, the risk and the safety to our officers is a paramount concern for me. One of the big things, like I mentioned before, is the booking and arresting procedures. When we're back here with someone that's been arrested, any added time you're back there alone, and I've had several officers come to me and talk about some pretty bad altercations back there when they're trying to handle these prisoners. They're back there by themselves a lot of times. Even with 2 officers, something could happen, and it's a huge risk of an officer getting injured or even possibly killed during this time. And then you have the risk of a inmate or a prisoner getting injured also. It's close quarters. You're back there trying to fingerprint people. Some people may not be compliant and may try to resist the process itself. And it's an inherent danger that I think is unnecessary with the process we have right now. And we mentioned before, to me, it's a redundancy. It's something that the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office already does. We're duplicating something that's already in place, that's mandated that they provide that service that we're having to do. As I mentioned before, it's a strain on our resources as far as transporting prisoners and court security. You're basically, on average, it could be up to 9 officers that we're using for those duties that we wouldn't have to do if our process changed. And as I mentioned before, we got off on that a few minutes ago. The liability to me in transporting the prisoners is something, again, that we're incurring that we don't have to have. And as I mentioned a while ago too, the longer you're back there, the longer the officer is engaged with a party that's been arrested, that is not happy they're being arrested and they're not cooperating, the longer you're there, the more inherent risk you're having for that officer back there.
Do we have to do a lot of extraditions?
We've had quite a few since I've been here.
Really?
And that risk is enhanced to me if it's an out-of-state extradition or even across the state. That's added time, hours that these officers that are transporting these prisoners, that something could go wrong. Even if it's a medical emergency for that prisoner. It may not be them trying to resist or flee or anything. That falls back to me on the town and on the police department. Is it's going to call into question, were you rendering aid or giving this person the medical treatment they needed?
So that goes away if we transport them to Rutherford County?
Yeah, because any extradition would be the county's responsibility.
And the warrants.
And the warrants, yes.
That we shut down.
And hinting on this again, the potential for injury or in custody death, the liability risk associated with that is huge. Unfortunately, I was involved in some of those cases and incidents in Chattanooga, and I'm telling you, it's not a pretty picture. It's a huge liability that I once again do not think we have to incur upon ourselves. You're talking about wrongful death cases and civil rights cases that could be arise from a in custody death that incurs large penalties and millions of dollars possibly. And again, we're just going back to the transportation and the extradition of prisoners. It's just a risk that we don't have to have, in my opinion. And then the last point, and I've talked to Mr. Peach about this, one of the largest liability cases I think the town ever faced was involving a prisoner transport. And this goes back to the TCI, the Tennessee Correctional Institute, that audits us every year due to our bonding procedures and us having a holding cell. And we were facing a pretty hefty fine, according to what I've been told several years ago, because we weren't meeting the standards of them actually counting us as a jail or a prison facility, basically. And they actually went to the extent of creating a different tier for the Smyrna Police Department so we wouldn't have to face that. But each year these audits happen, and it could happen again. They could come in and try to find an issue for how we do procedures and our processes here, and could face another fine again. And again, to me, it's something that we don't have to have, so why have it and incur that liability upon the town and the police department? And Last thing I want to say is, to me, the most important thing here is officer safety. I've worried about it since I've been here. I've worried about the risk we're taking in the booking process and why we're doing it, and we're incurring that risk to that officer. And it's hard for me to wrap that around in my head if one of our officers get hurt back there trying to deal with this process that we don't even have to have. And that's my biggest concern when it comes down.
Okay. Questions for Chief? Thanks, Chief.
Jeff, you got anything else you want me? Mayor, as council, as we discussed in the previous public meetings, staff was tasked with providing some examples for a charter amendment that would remove concurrent general sessions jurisdiction of the court if the council decides to propose an amendment for voter referendum. And before we did that, however, there was some issues that we had researched, and we additionally sought out a formal opinion from MTAS, which is the Municipal Technical Advisory Service. I know that you know that, but for the public. And we wanted to ask that for purpose of narrowing down, or at least clarifying, the state of Tennessee law as it pertains to removal of the concurrent general sessions in conjunction with the interruption of current terms of office for judicial positions. Well, it took about, I think it was about 3.5 weeks, something like that. And then this past Saturday, the formal opinion was issued by MTAS, and it mirrored our analysis, which basically is that Tennessee law is unsettled on the subject as it pertains to abridgment of the terms and salaries of the elected officials. Because of that ambiguity, when we were preparing amendments for you to look at and deliberate on and choose, we kept that in mind, so that's why we came up with two separate Exhibit A and Exhibit B, as you have in your packets, for you to decide on. Of course, if the council decides to do nothing, then there's nothing that further you have to do. The court would remain the same, jurisdiction would stay the same. However, if you decide to make an amendment for the purpose of judicial economy and efficiency, which needs to be your reasoning, you would need to pass a charter amendment. And when I say passage, let me explain that for just a minute. In the context when I use passage from here on out, to change the charter, there is a series of things that we would need to do. First of all, you would have the amendment passed as an ordinance. So you'd have a first reading, then you would have advertised in the paper for 3 weeks, the full text of the amendment. We would come back then for a second reading and a public hearing. You have to have a 2/3 vote by the council on both of those. And then it would go to a referendum of the Smyrna voters. The council would have to determine a special election if you chose to have it in March, in the presidential primary in Rutherford County would be the next election that we have. If you wanted to have it in conjunction with another election, which I would assume that you would if you chose to do so. It would then go, if it passed by just majority of the citizens, then that amendment would go to the General Assembly. The General Assembly would have to approve it. The General Assembly would then send it back to the Town Council for another 2/3 ratification vote. And then the amendment would be operative after that. Any questions on that? All right. So Exhibit A, or we call it Option A, whatever you choose, as you see there before you, in essence, I won't read through the entire code. In essence, what that would do is it would remove the concurrent general sessions jurisdiction of the town court. The elected positions of the clerk and judge would cease. Position of court clerk would become a town employee position, and the town judge for the municipal codes and traffic offenses, the town court, municipal court, would be appointed by a majority vote of the town council. The law requires that any municipal court that exercises concurrent criminal jurisdiction must have an elected clerk and elected judge, so that's the reason that you have such right now. It's not required to have those elected positions with a court that only hears municipal violations. So that is A. B,
Wait, so option A is remove the general sessions jurisdiction.
that's correct.
And the clerk's and the judge's position and salary would stop at whatever date that is. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So option B, Exhibit B, this amendment, upon passage, would remove the concurrent criminal general sessions jurisdiction of the town court. However, the elected court clerk and the town judge would fulfill their current elected terms of office, and their salaries would remain unchanged. Upon the expiration of their terms, the court clerk position would become a town employee position designated by the town manager, and upon the expiration of the judge's term, then, as the one before, then the town council by majority vote would appoint the town judge at their will.
So during that interim period, the clerk would perform municipal clerk role,
Correct.
and the judge would essentially be the municipal judge.
Correct. And that's what they are now. They just have
Yeah, I
concurrent
understand, but
jurisdiction.
they would continue on in those capacities, just only fulfilling the municipal side because General Sessions is back in Murfreesboro.
That's correct.
But they continue to get their salaries.
Correct.
Yes.
And their salary cannot be reduced. Now, we have cost of living, stuff like that to
But they
raise
would-
it, but
They would still get those too, right? Cost of living, because I think one of these would go to 26 and the other goes to 30. So
Right.
they would still get cost of living adjustments and
That's correct.
every other regular increase like they normally would have anyway.
that's correct.
But the court would go back to Rutherford County. The general sessions court would go back to Rutherford County.
We could put it that way, and I understand what you mean. We would just remove jurisdiction, because if you think about it, right now, Rutherford County,
It's already there.
it's already there, and
right.
you as a Smyrna citizen also elect Rutherford County judges. So they have concurrent jurisdiction, which means it's the same as. So that's why if a deputy or a highway patrolman pulls someone over or arrests someone in Smyrna, they take their warrants out in the Rutherford County General Sessions Court.
Okay, and also under this change, the judge now becomes appointed rather than elected on the new term, after
Yeah, upon the expiration of the term, correct.
Okay.
And I think Raquel and I guess everyone, the way I'm looking at it is once that happened, that municipal job is really a part-time position.
Correct.
That would, so it's not, it would essentially, whatever she would need to do up to full-time up until that time. But I mean, essentially, when general session went back, it really wouldn't be a full-time position after that either, even though she would continue to get paid full-time. Correct?
Correct. She should be, yes, considered a full-time judge.
Yeah.
And about how many hours do we think that is?
Looking at our dockets, we felt like about 4 to 5 hours a week are municipal, and then somewhere between 18 and 20 hours a week are general sessions
On the bench?
on the bench.
On the bench. Okay.
And you base that number on,
The dockets, we
That's
just looked
what
at the dockets and the number of cases.
okay. And so the number of cases, because I wanted to know that as well, how many they had, and like right now, they have like 5,000?
I don't have that with me tonight, I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. I'm just trying to see if that number is gonna be enough to effectively address what's still coming down the pipe. That's all.
I don't know what you,
I don't
explain what you
understand that
mean by
question.
that. I don't know what
The
you mean by
docket.
that.
So the docket would no longer have general sessions. Is that what you're telling me? it would only have what we have lingering
No.
for the 18 to 20 hours?
Oh, I don't know what he's talking about on that.
No, what I heard her ask is currently how much time is being spent in general sessions and municipal. On an average week right now, what I've been able to work with the clerk and also looking at the dockets, it's about 4 to 5 hours a week is spent on municipal court, which is the speeding tickets and the
Right.
grass cuttings and all those kind of things. And then they're spending somewhere between 18 and 20 to 22 hours a week, depending on the size of the docket, on
For
general sessions.
Okay, but that would all,
Municipal
Go
court
away.
municipal court would still be there.
so it would just be the 4 to 5 hours and not the, because I was thinking he was saying it's still going to be 18 to 20 hours of general sessions. That's what I was trying to get.
Jeff, is it my understanding that whatever the date is that Smyrna would no longer do general sessions, there would be nothing general sessions? It would all, I hear you don't want me using the term go back to Murfreesboro. I don't know what the correct term you want me using.
Correct. The operative, the charter would be effective upon passage.
Okay.
So then you'd not have subject matter jurisdiction. But keep in mind, of course, even with municipal court, as it stands right now, those dockets and what times they choose or whatever is up to the clerk and the judge on when they're going to have their dockets.
So after our third vote would be when general sessions would no longer, if it makes it through all the charter amendment steps.
That's correct, unless you put something different in there to say it
On
goes
this
into
date.
effect at a certain time, but yes.
Okay.
What would happen with all existing cases that are in flight at that point? General session cases?
Well, that's one thing we're working on with the District Attorney's Conference. And so I don't have the answer for you just yet. I know it's happened in other jurisdictions, but rather reserve comment on that until I can give you a
Okay.
full answer.
Yeah, so my only thought, and this is really for the rest of the council, is if we had to continue probation arrangements that were already in place or any of those type of functions, some of this dollars that looks like it would go away may not go away immediately. It may have to trickle down as those cases fall off the docket or fall off the process. Or if we could transfer all of it to Murfreesboro, then maybe it all goes to Murfreesboro, but we don't know that yet. That's the only reason I'm asking, is it's not a point in time, you're talking about, it'd take effective immediately. We wouldn't get any new general sessions cases after that point, but we may or may not have to continue some existing work. We don't know that yet, is what I'm hearing.
And what you're saying is, we don't know what the transition looks like, and you won't know that until after you've met with the judicial conference.
That's
Is that-
correct. Well, not judicial, with the District Attorney's Conference.
I'm sorry, district attorney's conference. So we won't know. And so you have to pose to them
Sure.
what we're having to transfer.
Sure, and we're speaking with other cities that have done this, on what mechanisms they used for those transfers. Because keep in mind, once you've got a subject matter jurisdiction problem, once they've lost jurisdiction. So obviously, that has to be transferred via a mechanism either by operation of law or by court order.
Okay.
So we're looking at, I can't give you the answer at this moment.
And I guess either way, if we went down this option 2 route, the judge and the clerk would continue to be paid for some number of years, so it wouldn't really matter how long it took us to transfer some of those matters from their perspective. Some of the other supporting staff, it might be a different factor, is the only thing I'm getting at. Like probation, for example. If we have, somebody who's on probation for 2 more years and they've been making payments to us, and this stops, now what happens to that last year? Do we continue to collect it and forward it? Do they just now go to Murfreesboro? What do we do with that? And if we've got to collect it, we got to make sure our existing clerks, our new clerks, or existing probation, somebody's covering it. That's all I'm getting at. Is there's some things that might not just end.
But if it goes through the charter amendment process and the clerk and the judge no longer have general sessions jurisdiction, how can they continue?
Well,
How can the-
that's what I just stated, that
Right.
it's just the mechanism of how that's going to be transferred. That's what we're going to have to get back to you.
Okay. other questions for Jeff on what he's essentially calling option A and B?
Other than the judge and the clerk's salaries, there's no difference between the two?
And the terms, obviously.
Right, yeah.
I do have, with regards to, I guess it's Exhibit B. In Exhibit B, it talks about setting the salary. So I'm looking at futuristically here, not currently.
Okay.
In your red line version.
Okay.
It doesn't have a page number on here. You talk about setting salary that, for the clerk, the salary would be set by the town manager. And I don't have a problem with that, but I would like some kind of limitation, like based on the salaries of other clerks in similar positions or something to give some kind of lead
We've actually done that.
direction.
It might be time for me to look at the next slide that I have to present.
Oh, okay.
Because we have done some research on other communities that just have municipal and structured around the same timelines and those kind of things. So I'm not going to be able to give you an exact number, but I can tell you.
Oh, I'm not asking
Yeah.
for a number. I just wanted the language to say it would reflect similar.
It's like any
people in
other
similar-
job within the town.
It's just not in here.
Yeah, it would.
So I would like for it to be
Any
in the
job
language.
within the
But
town.
that job's gonna be, the clerk's job is the way I read it, the clerk's job was gonna be a town employee job that is not done by council, not appointed by
Right.
council. So
But
Should
I-
they
but I
not, should the
understand it.
council not be, not council, should the clerk not, that salary be reflective of other clerks
Just-
in similar
And
situations?
that's what I'm saying,
That's all.
what we'd do is we'll look at that, and then we grade every job through HR.
Yes.
And we look at similar positions, that's how we set the salary structures on all our employees. We would do that same process, so yes, there would be a range. The clerk's job would then be added to the town employee matrix, where it grades out at, and then the pay range would fall within that.
Okay.
my only concern about putting it in the ordinance like that is, do we then handcuff future councils if they have to stay within that range rather than what the,
I'm not asking for a range. I'm just saying, look
Yeah,
at
we- just how we grade the job.
situated,
It would be
similarly
treated-
situated clerks. Some general language, so he has some guidelines to go by. It doesn't have anything in here. It just says, and the town manager shall determine the compensation of the town clerk.
You know, really though, when you look
but
at
that's
that,
what
the
he does
town,
with every employee.
the
He
town
decides.
clerk in this position and the municipal one is just like any other employee. It's not by statute as the judge is.
Right, it wouldn't be by statute in this, I know.
No, I mean the position, creating the position.
Do we have other positions in the charter like that? We do, right? There's other positions that are referenced, that the town manager sets the salary of other employees?
So again, I go back to, we have a matrix.
I understand
where all the
that.
jobs are graded, and what we would do is that job then becoming a town clerk.
I
For
understand
the
that.
municipal court would be graded and put into that matrix at whatever level it graded out at.
So,
And
Brian,
Compared to
just
other,
answer my question, though. Do we have others in the charter that are called out, other employees,
no,
like Amber?
no.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah,
Yes, it
I'm
is.
sorry.
So that's what I'm pointing at.
And-
It's
and in
exactly
times
like the way
past-
he handles Amber today. It's exactly the way he handles, there are other employees that would be handled exactly the same way. They fall under the matrix. There's a range, and that range gets adjusted as we see markets or things change. This is handled no differently. That's what I was getting at, was there's other employees that we're handling the exact same way already.
Prior to us creating the general sessions court, the person who sat in Amber's seat, I use that loosely,
Was the town
served
clerk.
as the court clerk.
That's right. That's what I always thought Diane's title was, right? Was the town clerk.
And I'm more comfortable keeping it like it is
Yeah.
there, which gives the discretion to the town manager.
But again, I would tell you, we're not gonna just arbitrarily pick a number in the air. It will be a graded out job placed into the matrix. And even though Amber is called out in the ordinance, she is still in the matrix.
Okay,
There's only 2 employees within the town that are not in the matrix.
okay.
And those are the 2 that report directly to the council.
So there are some limitations
Yes, ma'am.
according to the matrix as you have it set up?
Yes,
Okay.
we would have HR take that job just like we do. We've come to you guys many times and said, we've looked at what police sergeant's salary should be, and it needs to be bumped up, or it needs to, it stays where it's at, but every 3 to 5 years, we look
It's
at
based
every,
on that
every job.
determination of the
Yes,
job.
ma'am.
Okay, okay.
Other questions about charter amendment, option A or option B? I know that we originally had, in our other two meetings, had talked about option A, but I will tell you, after getting back the MTAS, I know it still gives us the option to do option A, but I don't know legal standing wise that we have as much comfort with that one as probably option B, and also kind of, being able to keep a term and a salary for the two elected positions. So for me, if we're going to move forward, I'm definitely more comfortable with option B than option A.
I like option B better. That was one of the sticking points that I kind of had with option A always, was what happens with elected officials. And we kind of tabled it and said, well, Dixon's going through it, we'll find out what we can do, and we kind of didn't really talk about it, but we focused on the numbers. I agree with you that, to me, to avoid the situation of us being in legal jeopardy or having to go for, or them even having to go through that process, why not just include paying them to the remainder of their term? It just makes sense to me. That if that's the route we're gonna go, then they should be paid for the elected term they've been elected to.
And another reminder, in the charter amendment, we're not making the decision. All
Absolutely
we're
not.
doing is asking the citizens, do they want to keep the process or do they not want to keep the process? And if they don't, this is the route that it's going to go.
So we're asking the question, though, in order to achieve judicial economy and efficiency is the whole point, right?
Correct.
So then there were some things that we talked about in that other meeting that I don't think I don't think answers have been given on yet, and I think it's important to have that information before proceeding. Steve, you asked about the fact that we had the audit back in 2018, and at the time, it was the police department's position that it was going to need another $1.1 million or $1.2 million in funding to be able to make this transfer back. And you had asked how that looked now, and I don't know if you ever got an answer from that. I don't know. I just think it's important to bring out all the facts that are involved in making this decision, and let them fall however they may, but not leave any question unanswered.
I think I can answer. One of the things that, and I wish we hadn't called it an audit in 2019, because really, we're doing the same thing now. What we
Yes.
did is a deep dive, look into the financials, look into the processes. When we went through that, one of the things that the chief at the time told me was that he was concerned about the number of hours that our police officers would spend at the court. There was times that prior to 93, we would send people to the old courtroom in Rutherford County, and they would sit there all day, and their case, may last 15 minutes, but they had to sit there from 8 o'clock to 4:30 to get their case heard. I think one of the things that we've seen that's happened is a couple of things. One is there's a new courthouse that's much more better positioned to flow the court. There's not as much backlog and jam at that court is what we're being told. There's actually a floor of the courthouse now that's available for expansion of the court. The other thing is they do allow us now to use a court liaison, and we have checked with Rutherford County, we could continue that service. So many times our officer would not have to go down unless they were actually testifying, and the court liaison could be there to read their comments and those kind of things that process. So instead of having 5 or 6 people sitting there on their time off, going through the court. The other thing that we learned is the other jurisdictions, basically the Rutherford County Court will, and I'm not picking on any other jurisdiction, but say, Laverne, what's a better day for you guys to come down, and they will move their docket to hear all the Laverne cases on a certain day. So there's a lot more efficiency in the operation. So, again, working with our current police chief, he does not feel that that will be an issue going forward based on our conversations with other jurisdictions. We do not see lag times with Laverne and or Eagleville or Murfreesboro. In fact, they're saying a lot of times their officers don't even go to court.
Yeah, one of the other things that Chief Irvin got back to me on that we did talk about in that meeting, when Chief Arnold looked at this, all those things weren't necessarily in place, but there was also still a very manual warrant process. And now they're allowed to use, they're using e-warrants. So that also restricted how much time they had to spend when they did drop off officers. So he did get back to me, and he checked with, I think it was Laverne and maybe Eaglewell or Murfreesboro, I think. Yeah, he got back to me and told me that he had talked to them about how much time that takes, and it's trivial. So I'm, to your point, I was concerned, right? We had one chief saying one thing, we had another chief saying something different. But there is 5 years difference between there, and there's a lot of things that have changed since then. And so I'm comfortable that the current chief that we have has laid out his case, and he's made a lot of good points, and I'm trusting him to do his job and that his job's accurate. So that's kind of where I landed on that, is that's what we've hired him to do, and this is what he says. If he's wrong, and it is more, he's gonna have to answer to that when he comes to us for budget next year. That's what his job is. So that's kind of the way I've looked at it, is it's his responsibility. He's taken on that responsibility, and I trust him to do his job, so I'm gonna let it go.
Okay.
And I do, I guess, to your point, Mayor Esther, I want to make sure, I personally have never been to the General Sessions Court in Smyrna. Hope I never am, right? So I haven't had to use that service or been a part of that service. So I recognize that to some citizens, it may be easier a service or whatever to them. And that's why, to me, I think the referendum is important. If we put this out for a referendum and the citizens vote that they want to keep this in Smyrna, then the citizens have spoken, so be it. It is what it is. And then we're gonna figure out a way to make it work, and we'll continue to use tax dollars to fund it. I don't have any issues with that at all, if that's what the citizens want. And often, we get called to put a referendum out anytime there's something in the community that's a little, I guess, questionable, or something that a lot of people have different opinions about. And this is one of those times that we have a requirement to do it. And so I think we should, that's what I'm voting for, is letting the citizens decide. I'm not voting to send the court back, to not send the court back, to leave it here, to do whatever. I'm voting to let the citizens decide. Mostly because of the financial issue that it's put us in. We looked at it in 19, and what you guys didn't say, I know you meant it, but you didn't say it. In 19, there was a significant loss then as well. And we had a new judge coming, one judge leaving, a new judge coming. Judge Stevens had been the clerk before, and she had told us there was lots of things that could possibly change to correct it. Some of those things have been changed. There have been several things that have been modified to try to correct some of the negative numbers we were seeing. And although a dent has been made, it is better than it was. It's still significant, right? So that's the issue, and that's why we came back to it in 23, was in 19, we saw a pretty significant deficit. We had a new clerk and a new judge that said they could make some changes, and they did, and they've corrected things, but we're still a long way off. And
But I
that's,
go back to what I said, it is nobody's fault. We tried to
No.
add probation, we have tried to do, but when you look at general sessions courts across the, they're gonna operate,
right.
what is it, the word you're using?
Negative cash
In the
flow.
negative
Yeah,
cash flow.
absolutely. They're not supposed to be a revenue source, right? And I get
Right.
that. I think the biggest thing is, everyone in Smyrna pays property taxes to Rutherford County at the same rate that Murfreesboro, Eagleville, and Laverne pays. They're getting that service out of the county, out of those county taxes that they pay. Everyone in Smyrna pays that same rate, but you're also paying town of Smyrna taxes. And we're using $900,000 of town of Smyrna tax dollars to provide a service that you're already paying for in Rutherford County. And so that's my biggest issue, is it's not whether, there's been some questions, is it a duplicated service? I mean, not technically, a guy in Smyrna can't go to both, right? You have to go to Smyrna. But we are paying for the service twice. And if we're okay with that, citizens want to do that, and they think that the benefit of not having to drive to Murfreesboro outweighs that cost, then absolutely, let's keep doing it.
And it's not like we're tossing a big expense onto the county down
That's
there
right.
either.
I think they
Because
can
there's
absorb almost
economy
all
and
of it.
scale in what they're already doing.
Well, they're getting 40% of ours.
And they're getting 40% of ours too.
Yeah, they're already making these transports daily probably, or at least every time the court's open. So
It's
they
every day.
Yeah, so daily, they're already handling probation, they're already handling clerks. At a minimum, they might have to add a staff member or two, but that's the only, I think, impact that it would have to them.
Well, and we're having to pay on top of for the DAs and the
Right.
public defenders and all that. so.
That's been my whole thing with this whole thing, is anytime, anywhere we've seen, when we first got elected, and Raquel and I and Tim was on that ballot with us, there was a lot of people clamoring about the golf course not making money. And we had to do a deep dive into the golf course, and we said, what can we change? Well, we made some changes. We implemented Golf Now, allowed for online booking, and for the last 2 years, the golf course has been in the black. If it was still in the red, we would be having similar conversations. I think that's our responsibility as elected officials, is to be financially sound, and this is one of those cases that we haven't been able to get there. This entire council, with the exception of Jerry, has been here since 2019. So we've all been responsible for it for 5 years. You were here in 2019? Well, I mean, you were alive. Okay, well, he was here too. So, you know, it's not
But I
like
think
it's not like it's a different council or different perspective. We've been doing this the whole time.
But I do think there is an added perspective in what Chief Irvin has come in
Absolutely.
from, almost from day one, and his major concern for liability. And that's not saying the former chief didn't have that, but Jason has had major
Well,
concern for
and
that.
one of the things, and I don't mean to use the word discount, but that's the best way I can describe it. Chief Arnold knew what Chief Arnold knew. He had only done it one way here in Smyrna since the 90s. Jason has seen it done a different way. So when we're asking the chief to give us their opinion on what's going to be more efficient or what's going to work better, I take a little bit more stock in someone who's seen it both ways now versus somebody who's only done it one way. And that's part of why I kind of just decided that Jason's, I guess, recommendations took a little more weight for me, was because he's got both perspectives.
Other questions about option A or option B or the charter amendment for Jeff?
It might have been in there and I missed it. If we do an appointment, if this goes through and makes it, and we do an appointment, how long is there a term for the appointment for the judge?
Serves at the will of the council.
But that appointment would not be until 2030.
Yeah.
Brian, I think you've put some numbers together.
You know, we've kind of talked around them. I'll be happy to show them to you. We looked at, option A was the one that we talked about in the other meeting, so I'll just kind of quickly show that. This is if we had municipal court only. Again, go back to the original numbers. I'm going to stay on the 2023 line. We had $975,000 in revenue, $242,800 in expense. And again, I remind you that has 3 employees in that number. So the net municipal subtotal was $732,000. Doing research, looking at part-time judges appointed, we felt like somewhere in the $50,000 to $60,000 range, so we plugged $55,000. That's what we were seeing very similar in other jurisdictions. And again, keeping in mind that was a 5-hour-a-week type job for some of the judges. Some of the judges were doing every other week process, would do 1 during the day and maybe 1 at night a month, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of variation that could be put in there. We did say, even though we were going to municipal court, we'd still need to have some security and safety from the standpoint of police support, but it would be minimal. And again, we would not be dealing with any of the prisoners in the back in a holding cell and those kind of things. So we plugged in some of those kind of things for courtroom security. There were some overlap on some of the contractual and operating supplies that would still remain, some of the softwares, those kind of things. So we added those dollars back in, and then again, as I told you, we had the traffic school salaries were being paid out of judicial, so we brought them over, added them back. The revenue stream was already there. So the total additional expense, $149,000, gives us a net positive cash flow of $583,000. That is if we went with option A. Option B, the next page, basically the numbers stay the same. The only difference would be the judge and the clerk's salary staying in at their full salary and through their terms. Now, this number would change in '26 and then again in 2030. But just looking at the current numbers and adding those dollars back, you can see that as you come down, the net cash flow, positive cash flow would still be $360,000. The one thing, and Steve, you kind of touched on this. I think it's important for us to understand, you know, with a negative $900,000 on the general sessions, the way it currently exists, if there was no change, when you look at our tax rate at 52 cents for Smyrna, that's a negative impact of about 4 cents, maybe just a little tad over 4 cents. So in that 52-cent tax rate, there's 4 cents added back to cover the expenses of the general sessions. If you go to the A scenario here, that would be a positive back of about 2 to 2.5 cents. Even under option B with the positive cash flow operating the general or the municipal court side only is a little over 1.5 cents of positive tax relief. So I think it's, and the point is that we're paying for those services as duplicated services in Rutherford County in our tax rate, and that's what the impact would be on the Smyrna tax rate.
Questions on the numbers? Comments or questions in general? So Jeff, if we decided that we wanted to move forward and we wanted to move forward with option B, what would that look like moving forward?
It's going to be just like any other ordinance that we would, it should be passed as an ordinance, actually. If that's what council chooses to do, then obviously that would be placed on the agenda just as we would any other ordinance change. And so the only exception is going to be you would also have the advertise it 3 weeks after the first meeting in the paper, the full text.
What's your recommendation based on everything you've studied and what we've gotten back from MTAS? If you were sitting on this side, what's your recommendation?
I'd say that if you're going to pass something and not leave it as is, that option B obviously has, I say obviously, I guess it's not obviously, the likelihood of approval by the General Assembly is greatly increased by allowing the terms to stay and the salaries to remain the same, because there's some issues, and I've spoken with that to you with Article 11, Section 9 of the Tennessee Constitution. Tons of case law out there, not case law related to municipal court judges. But the hesitation that I have heard even from legislators is to end a term for anyone that's been elected. So I would recommend, if you're going to make a change, that option B is in.
Council, questions? I guess I go back to the question that I kind of started with, not only for us, but for the citizens. I mean, what we would be looking at passing would not be saying we're going to do option A or option B. It would be saying we're giving the citizens the decision-making power of, do they want to continue the General Sessions Court or do they not? And is this a duplicated process we want to continue, or do we want to move General Sessions Court back to Rutherford County for judicial economy and efficiency? And I think the only way we move forward with that is by putting it on the agenda for September. How do you all feel about that with option B?
I think especially in fairness to these both the ladies that won these seats back last year, that's about the only way I think I could see myself supporting it, from the standpoint of knowing how hard it is to run a campaign and get out there and win an election anyway. And then to not support that, for me, would be wrong. So I do place a lot of value tonight on what I've heard from Chief Irwin, and here's why. We can think about money, we can think about everything we're looking at here from a perspective of our courts and everything else, but I recall, I think it was then Mayor Dover, who's back there in the audience, we had a meeting on a tax increase many years ago. And I can recall in that meeting telling the citizens that I would never support anything that took money away from our police department, that we were going to stand by that police department. That's kind of been where I've always planted my flag with our police and fire departments, especially their safety. These people, in my prayer, these people put their lives on the line. Who better do we have to give us guidance than those two gentlemen right there to tell us about safety and welfare of our officers? And so that carries a lot of weight with me. And so I appreciate your departments, both of you, and your officers and the people doing all the fires, Chief. I value that. And the comments from the chief, to me, puts a lot of onus on a good reason, if no other reason. If you can just look at the money and say, hey, the money is a service. Truth, it's a service. Are we duplicating it somewhat? Yes. But it is a service to the citizens of our community. And I know both of them that are filling these seats right now. They do a good job. They worked hard to get there. I think personally it's a requirement of ours really to have our citizens take a look at this, knowing the facts that have been put out here and the facts that will go forward. I think it's important that our citizens have some say in this. And, you know, if they find the good job that we know they do now wants to continue, and like Steve, so be it. I think that's the way it ought to go. But that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. But there are also lives that are important to me. And so I think I've said all I need to say about that.
Anybody else?
I'm in favor of moving forward with this at the next meeting.
Okay. Anything else before we move on to item 12? Item 12 is consideration of a proposed amendment to the town charter relative to Article 9 in the town's court. Jeff, anything you want to add with this?
That is what you just considered, and if I heard you, option B is what you're asking for.
Correct. Okay, I think we have a couple of things under other tonight, and you have them on your desk in front of you. Rex, how are you?
Hi, Mayor, Council.
Great.
You doing all right?
Wonderful.
These are the last of the fiscal year 2023 budget amendments. There were some operating expenses for the cemetery and utility services for the event center that were over budget. The balance of these amendments were for capital projects such as computers, a wash station at the garage, and the Lowry Street project. We're asking that you would approve these budget amendments.
So we'll need to put this on as an item for, or do we need, or you want us tonight?
No.
For at the meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Questions for Rex on this, for putting it on the agenda?
Telephone services in the cemetery, who are those people calling?
I was wondering the same thing.
It's obviously a direct line.
It's a hotline.
It's the phone that our folks that work with people using the cemetery services use. So it's not,
I've been out there and I didn't see a phone.
yeah, there's not a phone booth.
Okay. Anything else, Rex, tonight?
No.
Nope. Okay. Brian, I've
Yes,
been
ma'am.
hearing some rumors out there about something a little bit exciting that we might be looking at.
Mayor and Council, we're not prepared to come forward with this tonight, but we have received 3 bids. We went out for bids. I know one of the things that our Parks and Recs Department has been very interested in providing as a service, and I know our mayor has had some interest in this as well, but ice skating through the holiday seasons. And we were at ICSC this year and happened to see a system that's non-refrigerated. It's more of a synthetic ice that has Very, very low cost of operation because there's no refrigeration. And that was one of the things that was a real drawback for us in the past. So we have received 3 bids. We are actually going through those bids, and I hope to bring something to the council at the council meeting to give you guys some ideas of what we could do. And hopefully, we could have it in place for this holiday season.
I think that would be a great addition and something citizens would be.
It's 100
pretty-
degrees outside, I'd be loving it right now.
Would be pretty
With the
excited.
synthetics, you could actually ice skate tonight.
Yeah, so, I appreciate Brian and staff looking for opportunities that are not just, that kind of think outside of the box, but still provide that atmosphere of what it would be like skating and during the holiday season. So I look forward to you bringing that forward. Anything else under other tonight?
No, ma'am.
Hal? Kevin? Dennis? Rex? Charles? Of course. You wouldn't let us down.
Just want to bring one thing to the attention of the public. This weekend, TDOT will resume their resurfacing project at Weekly and Jefferson Pike this weekend. So this one will be 4 times the amount of area that they did last weekend. So this will be running through the weekend, even nights. So it'll start at Friday night at 8 p.m. with the lane closures and should be scheduled to be completed by Monday morning at 5 a.m. So use alternate routes or avoid the area if possible.
And remember, be patient.
And be kind.
There will be detours set up to use Gills, Swan Drive, and Fitzhugh, so that will be the detour route. Businesses will still be able to access, but there will be traffic delays in the area.
Yeah, last weekend, just the one section they were doing, it was backed up from pretty much the entrance to the airport all the way around past Gills.
Right,
So
and this
avoiding
weekend.
the area is the best solution.
Yeah, Weekly Lane will be completely closed at the Sam Riley intersection, so it will be completely closed there. So accessing any of the businesses or the recycle center will have to come off Swan Drive.
Okay.
There is another recycle center on Elmville Road.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
For Charles? Thank you. Carl? Tom? Mike? Jason?
No, ma'am.
Mike? Todd? Chief? Heather? Chief? Amber Lou?
Hey, Council, I do have a couple things I want to share with you. First, I wanted to share this note that I received from the Rigsby family. I shared with you Daryl, who works in our codes department. His mother passed away, and they sent a very nice thank you so much for the beautiful throw. I'm grateful for the work that I work with so many supportive coworkers. I appreciate your thoughts and prayers during this sad time of loss, and that's from the Rigsby family. Chief Irvin shared with me and sent it up, and I wanted to bring it to y'all's attention. Andy Miller received a email from the Tennessee Highway Safety Office, and they had been in to do a monitoring of our services through traffic. And what was really nice is not only did we get great accolades, but Tennessee Highway Safety Office actually used the Smyrna visit as an example to help train their new employees and how this should work. This work should be done across the state. So
Right.
that's some really good stuff. Received also a real nice note. Some of you know John Elston. John was involved with Charles a couple weeks ago out on Tridon Bridge. We had some 85-foot girders and beams that came in, and they were lining those up going down the interstate ramp, and John was out there helping direct traffic to get those in place so we can move forward on that Tridon Bridge work that I think will be completed, Charles, at the end of the year, somewhere in December?
Yes, we should have substantial completion by December.
Okay. So thank you to John and the work he does. He and Andy do a great job for us in the traffic side. Also, I received several letters from Leadership Rutherford. They've been doing some ride-alongs with the police departments, and they actually did some ride-alongs with the Smyrna Police Department, and they called out a couple of our officers, just how much they appreciated and how much they learned about what our officers do on a daily basis, and was very, very appreciative. Want to remind everybody that next Friday, September the 1st at 9:30 a.m., at the corner of Hickory Grove and Jefferson Pike, we will be doing the groundbreaking for Fire Station 4, which was awarded, contract was awarded a couple weeks ago here in the council, and we'll be moving forward with that groundbreaking. We do have some committee openings right now on our Smyrna Arts and Cultural Board. Melissa asked me to make sure advisory committee to let people know, and you can go online to www.townofsmyrna.org boards, and it's the Art Commission. If you have some interest in serving, I think
We have 3 openings.
3 openings, and we've had about 3 or 4 applications come through.
Okay, good.
So we're forwarding those over to Melissa to look at. This Saturday, August the 26th, beginning at 9 a.m. at Highland Heights Church of Christ, there will be a drive-through mobile food pantry, and they're inviting folks to come out, and it'll start at 9 a.m. and it says until 9 a.m. till supplies are gone. Limited to 1 family per car, please, but that's at Highland Heights Church of Christ. We were able to attend the United Way Community Celebration about a week ago. Appreciate everybody that was able to come out and represent the town of Smyrna. I'm continually impressed with the work that our committee does. We were listed in the top 10 campaigns. And when you think about the town of Smyrna with 500 employees, we're competing in those campaigns with people like Bridgestone, Publix Grocery Stores Charity, Nissan, places like that, and we were listed in the top 10. Also, a shout out to our own Sierra Lowry. She was recognized as the Young Leader of the Year and given that befitting award at the same meeting. So, and I have to finish up with my platform here. I won't linger tonight. We can continue to fight litter issues, not only in the town of Smyrna, but across the state of Tennessee. It's somewhat embarrassing sometimes when you go to some of these neighboring states and you ride through and you don't see the trash that we see on our interstates, on the ramps, and within our communities. So I just challenge everybody again to remember to not throw your trash out the window, keep it in the car, keep it in the vehicle, secure the loads in the back of the trucks, and take that refuge to your house or to a service station where there's a receptacle to accept the trash, and let's do all we can to keep it off our streets and keep our community beautiful and love where you live. That's all I got, Mayor.
Great. Jeffrey L.
Sounds like I'll be staying home from 8 p.m. Friday night till Monday and Friday.
Jax won't be able to get out and ride around.
No, we'll be taking the trash on Tuesday. Nothing else for me.
Raquel.
You're gonna have to take half a day
That's
just
right.
to get there. I was able to go out and participate in the event that was at the Smyrna Event Center with Mike Moss last week, the classic car show with the band, and I think they had a really good turnout for that. Saw a lot of cool cars. If I'm not mistaken, I think Mr. Moss said it was over 60 cars that participated. I also saw my fellow councilmen out there partaking.
We had a grand time bonding, didn't we?
It was a fun event. Actually, Andy Miller told us a lot of interesting stories about his days coming up in the traffic division. So I actually learned a lot too while we were out there. So, and then today I was able to participate in the Smyrna High groundbreaking, which kind of explains why we all have the purple on up here, how we look like twinsies, all of us. So I was very excited to be able to participate in that with other elected officials, other people from the Rutherford County School Board, with the director, and some of the students and cheerleaders from Smyrna High School were also able to participate. So I'm glad that is getting underway. And lastly, I have a flyer that I received from one of our citizens, Miss Marion Appleton, who participated in a compilation that was done by the Tennessee State Museum that Mr. Moss and the Parks Department was also involved in. It is in recognition of the Rosenwald schools that are across the state. And so Fisk University is hosting a Building Community Continuing the Legacy, a Rosenwald Schools of Tennessee Symposium that will be taking place on September the 15th and 16th of 2023. And it's being hosted again by Fisk University and the Tennessee State Museum, and it's Rosenwald School alumni, historians, and the general public are all invited to this 2-day event exploring the history and legacy of the schools and the communities that built and preserved them. So I wanted to at least tell you all about that and give you more information, and there is a flyer and QR code if you are interested in finding out more information. But thank you, Mr. Moss, for getting Ms. Appleton involved and giving them the information that they needed to get their history, from the school that we have located here in Smyrna, and include that with their presentation. So that's all I have.
HG?
In keeping with my normal shop local message, I want to talk about the Depot Days, which is coming up, which will be September the 23rd. That's a yearly event sponsored by the Smyrna Independent Merchants Association. There will be multiple bands, many vendors set up, a lot of food, and good times to be had by all. This is an event that the whole town comes together for. The Parks Department kind of heads it up, and the fire and the police department work on it. And it's a fun event. I think people look forward to it every year. Lots of good food.
Friday night car show.
Friday night car show, absolutely. And if you go to any of these events, or if you're driving around on Nissan Drive this weekend, just be kind. And that's all I've got.
Tim?
In conjunction with the groundbreaking today, just my appreciation to the commissioners, the school board, and particularly Commissioners Boyd, Wilson, and Johnson, because I know they worked very hard on this to make sure Smyrna had a seat at the table as we continue to grow and, to meet the needs of the students at Smyrna High School.
Great. Jerry?
Let's see, first of all, my buddy here had a birthday the other day, so happy belated birthday, Steve.
Thanks, sir.
And you're starting to catch up.
Close.
You keep pulling back away.
If you add my numbers together, I don't think they equal.
You wouldn't. Let's see, want to remind you, or the class of 1973 is having their 50th reunion, September the 16th. Please, if you have not turned in to let us know you're coming, if you would, we would appreciate it to make sure we've got enough food. So if you know anybody from class of 73, please remind them it's coming up soon. Brian, just a shout out to your wife. Hope she's continuing to do.
She's doing very well,
good.
thank you.
Good. And as it's been mentioned before, last Friday night, Mike, that really had a good time over there. Patty and I had planned on going and staying about an hour or so, and we got there at 6, and I think we left at 9:15. It was just a beautiful night, and the music was great. Cars were very pretty, classic cars. So I really enjoyed that. In that band, I really enjoyed them. And then also, as it's been mentioned today, going over to Smyrna High School, and as Tim brought up about Commissioner Boyd and Johnson and Wilson and all, I know they work very hard, and we're very appreciative of the work that they do and how they support our town and our end of the county. So that's all I've got, Mayor.
Steve?
I think, got a slide, yep. So this past week, I had the opportunity to speak at Living Sent Ministries. They are a organization that focuses on bringing what you hear and what you learn at church on the weekends into the workplace during the week. That's kind of their mission. So I got the opportunity to share the podium with Alan Jackson, pastor from World Outreach. I asked them to make sure he went after me so that people would not leave disappointed, and they did not. But it was fun. If you're interested in visiting or joining or being a part of this, they meet, I believe it's the third Wednesday of the month at the Experience Church for lunch. And lunch is always provided. We had Demas while I was there, which is excellent. Also, Smyrna High groundbreaking. it was very hot. Glad to be there. But to Tim's point, and I think Jerry, our commissioners on this end, Boyd, Johnson, and Wilson, there was a discussion at one point that Smyrna might not have gotten that and that other schools was going to get that funding, and kind of a groundswell of support kind of started, and next thing you know, we're back in the running, and I really appreciate those commissioners fighting for us, because without them, I don't think this would be happening, and that's a very big testament to them. And then today, I don't know if anybody's got a slide for it, probably not, but Mark and I also attended Traditions groundbreaking. They've got a new building there, a 4-story building, I think is what it was. And, we wanted to go out mostly to support that 55 and over, or that elderly community. We've talked about it a lot here as something that we need in Smyrna, something that we're lacking enough housing for. And Traditions and that organization is doing their part to try to fill the need. And so I was glad to be able to go out and see that new building. It's a very nice facility. I picked out my unit. They told me I'm not old enough, Jerry. By the way, in '73, I was 2. But anyway, they said I wasn't old enough, so I have to come back. Next year. That's all.
Mark?
There's some slides here. Todd and I had some time over at Staples, and Todd stuffed the prize box and won something, and I didn't. So, Todd, you probably owe me something out of there. But congratulations to Staples. They've been in town for a while, but they've done a remodel inside. Really looks good. Heavy educational department over there, so kudos to Staples. Also, the Barbecue Fest was was it past weekend or weekend before? Weekend before last. It was hot, like everything is right now. But good turnout. Mike and his team always do a good job from Parks and Rec. A lot of, you can see Jerry and Patty were there, myself and Connie. I don't know, you were gone.
We were seniors.
You were seniors. Yeah, that's right.
We came out. We got some
Yeah, Steve, so we had a lot of people show up, that's my point. But anyway, good turnout, good barbecue, good event. So congratulations. The People's Choice Chosen Award was for Ship Dogs Barbecue. And, Ship always does a good job doing his barbecue. I too want to echo the efforts of our county commissioners on this end of the county. Spoke with all of them today at this groundbreaking for Smyrna High School, and tried to thank each one of them individually for their, lack of a better term, their fight to make sure Smyrna was included in all of this. And there were other commissioners. I mean, we've got, Commissioner Beverly, some of those others that are around the area that got in behind it and supported it as well. But special thanks to our Smyrna County commissioners for the job, not only that they're doing here, but just representing this end of the county. They do a really good job. We've got a good group of county commissioners that are representing the Smyrna area. So, on a sad note, a good friend of mine, a neighbor of mine, Susie Goins. Many of you probably know Susie if you've grown up in this town at all. Susie passed away last week. Her and Bob were married for 57 years. Bob's been gone some years now. So we kind of know that, their belief system is Susie back with Bob, right? So, and I agree. Just a wonderful lady. She served Life Point Church tremendously long. She was a greeter, I was a greeter. We would spend a lot of time in the lobby just chit-chatting until church got started. She's just a wonderful lady. So I want to send my condolences out to the kids, Bobby, Tammy, and her husband, Mark, Ashley, who is her granddaughter, and Brad, Abby, another granddaughter, and Scott, her husband, and a lot of little grandkids that I heard play out in that yard all summer long. So we've lost Susie, and we just want to send our condolences to the entire Goins family. She's a lovely lady. One thing about Susie I can say, constant encourager. Constant encourager. Never anything negative. Always positive. And I tell you what, she loved us and we loved her. So God rest and rest easy, Susie. And that's all I've got.
Couple of housekeeping items. Our 11th annual Town of Smyrna Charity Golf Scramble was recently held at the Smyrna Golf Course. We appreciate all the sponsors, players, committee members, and volunteers that make this event so successful. All the proceeds benefit the United Way of Rutherford and Cannon counties. And before I give you our record raising for this year, the way our day started off with our team was,
We won, didn't we?
of course we won. Of course we won.
I think y'all got the high score.
Well, of course, no, but
No, the high score
we
was
were
like 18
waiting
under.
on, we were waiting
That's
on
the
a
low score.
we were waiting on a player, and the player finally shows up, but the player shows up with a handful, what was it, 3 or 4 clubs in his
I
hand?
think he had 5 clubs.
5 clubs in his hand, no golf bag. Did he have shoes?
Is he even paying attention to you?
No, he's not.
He
He's,
was
he's
in tennis
ignoring.
shoes.
He was in his tennis shoes. So
Did he
we
have any
knew
golf
we had the
balls?
right, no, he had to go in and buy golf balls.
I
So he
did.
didn't have golf balls. But we knew we had the right person for the job when he showed up like that. So, but it was a fun day, had by all. But the best part is, we had a record raising this year of more than $70,000 raised for United Way for the Golf Scramble. So nice job of giving back to the community. Food Truck Friday is tomorrow night. Stop in after work or on the way to the ball game and indulge in Food Truck Friday at Cedar Stone Park. It will start at 6 p.m. Recently, I had the pleasure of celebrating Miss Jane Vale's 108th birthday. She is.
I knew her back when she was 80.
Yeah. So lots of stories were told. I think she used to write for the Rutherford Courier. So 108, but she was spouting off memories, and but it was a great time had for Miss Jane. MTSU Family Night was held in Smyrna, and we appreciate Blue Raider Athletics coming to the north end of the county to show us a little love. And it looks like, I mean, there was a great turnout, and we appreciate all the families that came out to, did we not have that one, or they didn't have that picture? Okay. This is the visit to Smyrna Elementary. Their 5th grade class is doing a STEM project for, I don't know if it's for the semester or the year, and it was my job to take the project to them as if I had been in communication with the military and that they were needing help from them on doing the project. So had a great time with the kids, and they're going to be working on this project over the next couple of months and giving me updates as they go along. So had a good time there. And then last thing is the Top Gun Night Run is Friday, September 15th. Sign up and join us for this family-friendly event. Spectators and runners can enjoy the grilled cheeses that'll be provided by Middle Tennessee Electric. Free of charge, and great music from Mixtape Band. And so we're going to change things up a little bit. I think we've got some doing lemonade and iced tea, and last year we had donuts. So it is definitely family friendly. So we encourage you to come out, whether you're running or just going to be a spectator. But you can go on our website to sign up. Is there anything else? Council, anything else? Okay, if nothing else, we're adjourned.